Oh, hey. When I was a kid, I had a few stuffed animals that I loved so much. And this is one of them. To be honest, I don't even know what this guy is. He could very well be a horse, or he could very well be a donkey. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But what I do know is that I call him Donkey. But on top of the identity crisis we already have, I don't even know how long I've had this guy. I even texted my mom and asked because she usually remembers every detail of everything pertaining to my life, but she didn't even know when I got him either. What I do know is that I love him. But here is another fun fact. When I was growing up, I had a pretty short temper. Hopefully that's a surprise to you. I didn't really get in a ton of trouble because my older sister usually would first, go youngest siblings. But when I did get caught for doing something wrong, I would get so mad. It eventually became this thing that when I was in trouble, I would be sent to my room. And so I would storm upstairs, I would fling myself onto my bed, and I would begin to throw my stuffed animals at my closet door hard. And as they hit the door, they would thud and then fall to the ground, and one after the other, they would all leave the bed. And eventually, I would get in more trouble because apparently you're not supposed to do that even when it seems like it's the best option at the time. I'm now older and a little wiser, and I can see that throwing my beloved donkey at the door was in fact not a good way to deal with my anger. I can admit that. But my emotions and my circumstances, I've had to work with those. I've had to work a bit on my patience, I've had to work a bit on my anger, and I've had to find a little bit of a better response to not always having things exactly the way I want them when I want them. I will tell you though that some of the things happening during this time are really testing my patience. No hanging out with friends, no church stuff in person, no sitting down at a restaurant for good food. And I think I've washed my hands more this past month than I have in the past couple of years combined. And it's just a little crazy. But now that I can't throw my stuffed animals at my closet, I'm learning a few different ways to cope with my irritation and my impatience. I want to read something that stuck out to me this week in Romans 8. Romans 8 is describing this feeling of waiting for something to happen that hasn't happened yet. And in verse 25, it says, "But if we hope for what we do not have yet, we will wait for it patiently." Y'all, there are a lot of things that I don't have right now, that we don't have right now, and we are being forced to wait. To me, life feels a little bit like a cave right now, and all of the things that I want or the things that we want and once had, they're all underwater at the bottom. But here's what I'm realizing. If we can work on our patience during this time, that's going to give us enough breathing room to go down into the cave, to be patient with yourself, and you can begin to ask, okay, what are my fears? What is my hope in? What about my insecurities? And you can actually decide what to do from there. We need to realize that we don't need to just be patient and that we hope that these things will pass in the weeks to come, but we need to do something in the waiting. We need to learn to follow God even in the waiting. There's this book in the Bible called Numbers, and it's all about God's people and what they did when they escaped from slavery in Egypt, and they were in this period of waiting before they could go to the promised land that God had given them. So I was reading about how these Israelites were out in the desert, and there's this cloud they were following. And some of you might know how this story goes, but in Numbers, it talks about how this cloud would move and then it would stop. And when it stopped, so would they. And it says sometimes they would stop for a day, and sometimes it would be a week, and sometimes it would even be a year. And I can't even imagine waiting for a cloud to move for a year before I could. But I'm telling you, be mindful and be intentional. Be situationally aware, because if God has you parked for a little bit of time, use it. Do this thing. Have your theology, which is just what you believe, have your theology inform some of the ways that you use your day. I have a feeling that some of us are really self-focused right now, and it's easy to be, like, don't get me wrong, because right now it's all about self-preservation. It's all about me. But here's the thing. That's not how Jesus called his followers to live. And the things that you really believe, you can start to put a fine point on them by seeing what you do with your time right now. Guys, but for some of you, your theology needs to inform your heart, and then you need to have it inform your face and stop being so dour. I get it. This is a really serious thing going on right now, and we need to deal with it seriously like we have been. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be helpful at all if all we're doing is isolating and spreading a whole bunch of concern. So if we have legitimate concerns, and I know there are, make them known. We want to help. And we want to help you, and we are here for you. So don't lose your joy in all of this. Some of the things that have helped me, just as everything's been going on right now, is trying to find simple things that bring me joy. And some of those things have looked like spending time outside or writing down some thoughts just so I can make things coherent. Good movies, FaceTiming friends and family, getting around to that project that hasn't been done, or reading a book. Just little things. And the possibilities are endless for you for creative ways to bring your soul joy. But I want to encourage you to try different things and to take care of yourself, but then to focus on others. Something that can help us break the cycle of being impatient and being irritated is simply to be mindful of other people. Think of someone else first. And Paul, who was the same guy that wrote the words we read earlier about waiting for hope we don't have and we haven't seen it, he wrote these words to a church, and I want to read them for you. It says this: "Do not be anxious about anything," which is tough to do, "but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Christ Jesus." I want to encourage you with that same verse this week. Even in this time when we can become so irritated and so impatient with all of the things happening around us, I want you to let Jesus be enough for you. Because if you let him, he will be enough for you. I want to read those words in a different way to you right now, and I really want you to truly, honestly hear them, okay? Here's what it said: "Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life." Wow. Guys, it is wonderful what happens when Christ displaces the worry at the center of your life.